Hi, my name's PamThePhysio.com and I'm just recording this video because I put a post on Facebook earlier this month and there was quite a large response to it, so I just thought I'd tell you a little bit more about my story. I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am a mother, I am a neurological physiotherapist, I am a stroke survivor. So this is my story of what does not kill you makes you stronger a decade on. So exactly 10 years ago I was lying in a CT scanner and I remember the radiologist saying, "Ooh, that's interesting, I haven't seen one of them before." That knowing that, oh, something was seriously wrong. I remember the tears rolling down my face, and he told me that I had had a sagittal sinus thrombosis. I didn't even know what that was, even though I was a neurological physiotherapist. So what was it? So this huge blood clot in my brain really explained why I had an excruciating headache. I used to pull my hair to give me some pain relief. My vision was a bit compromised, particularly around the edges. I didn't like bright lights. When the doctors looked at my eyes, I had some swelling around my optic nerve. I had a stiff neck. I was also at times projectile vomiting, and probably a lot of the time my family would say I was kind of semi-conscious. Lots of questions. Why me? Will I die? Will I have another stroke? Will I be able to be the mother that I want to be for my children? Will I manage to work again? All these questions running about in my head. It was scary. So 3 days before this, I had woken up in the morning with a horrendous headache, said to my husband, "I'm not well," and so we went to the GP. The GP then looked me over and thought, well, you might have a urinary infection, but there was nothing obvious to see. So went home. During the night of that night, I went to the GP out of hours, who then sent me down to A&E. At this point I was vomiting, projectile, and the doctor there just thought I was a bit anxious and that I really had a tension headache. 2 days later on, I still was basically wake up to eat, and that was about it, not well, so I actually went back to A&E. Now at this point they then admitted me to the ward, and then the consultant came to see me, who was also my colleague, and said, "We're going to send you for a scan." So I came back from the scan and my husband said to me, "I thought the scan was in your tummy, not your head." Which actually, to be fair, makes sense. He's not medical, and I'd only had a baby 2 weeks previous to this, so he assumed that that's where the scan was. I knew I was going for a head scan. I didn't even ask the consultant what he was looking for, because actually I was too scared. It was, for me and my family, a nightmare. It was a nightmare, and here we are with a 2-week-old baby, and I was ill in hospital. So being an inpatient in hospital, all the interruptions when actually I just wanted to sleep. I didn't ask too many questions about my diagnosis because I was terrified about what they might actually tell me. I remember going for the MRI scan and having this box round my head like a cage and feeling at Hannibal from the film. I remember still having the visual problems. I remember having to go for lots of appointments to the eye clinic. I remember lots and lots and lots of visitors, but fortunately the nurse realised it was an issue and stopped them coming. I remember being woken up to have my sleeping tablet, which was ironic because I was not able to sleep while I was there because of the medications I was on. I remember there being lights on at night. I remember having the patient television and communication system just come on at random hours or very early in the morning. I remember feeling very exposed, no privacy. It was like being in a goldfish bowl, really. Everybody kind of wondering, and I know it was out of kindness of their heart, but I just really wanted to crawl away into my little hole. I was there a while. I started to feel that institutionalised and feel safe there and not knowing what was going to happen. Yeah. So it was a long time to be separated every night from my daughter, my new baby. I remember being let out for an hour to take my son to school, because it was his first day ever of primary school, and then having my husband take me back to the hospital after we had done that, and then repeating that in the afternoon. One big event I remember was when the consultant came to speak to me about my blood. Did I have a potential blood disorder? And that actually this type of stroke, the DVT in my brain, was a very rare and life-threatening blood clot in the brain. And I have to say, the words life-threatening, I felt as if I'd been run over by a bus. I had not really realised that I was quite so poorly. Yeah, that was a shock. So I had 2 days where I was transferred to Leeds Hospital, and in this time I only had one visitor, and that was very lonely. I didn't see my baby. That was very difficult. I had a lumbar puncture, and which was quite painful, I have to say. But actually, aftermath of that was worse, because I then ended up from having originally the high pressure headache from the stroke now to a low pressure headache, and oh boy, I felt rough with a blood pressure of 70/50. So that put me flat on my back for a week. I was so lucky. I had huge support from family and friends, huge support. They helped us cope with our newborn baby, our 4-year-old son. I remember feeling really unwell, but wanting and needing to do the school run, and actually having to tell everybody was tiring at times, and the constant phone calls and appointments, and yeah, it was exhausting. Slowly getting better. I remember laughing about the fact that I had to have injections in my stomach, and it was a big post-pregnancy flabby belly, and I remember like joining the dots, the 50 dots that I had. I do remember also, because I was on warfarin, that had to be monitored, my blood levels, to get that right. And so I remember going to the clinic, and that was all the time, it felt like, until that was under control. And of course I had to take my baby with me. In fact, I added up all the appointments that I had over the time that I was unwell. I had 88 appointments at the hospital. It was completely exhausting. You do change after something like this. What can't not but change. I developed vestibular migraines. I was very lucky I didn't have any physical deficits, other than I had my high level balance was pretty rubbish at times. I could walk about, but at times I would be quite dizzy, I would be staggering and maybe walk into the walls, particularly if I was tired, which with a newborn baby I was. I had so some very high level balance problems, so when I, now even when I run, I have some visual disturbances where the ground actually moves from side to side, and so that makes it really difficult, particularly when I want to cross a road, because I can't turn my head because I'm trying to concentrate and being upright. But I manage, I cope. I fortunately had no long-term physical problems, that I could manage most things, but I did actually have, and still do have, problems with my memory in certain aspects. I've got big gaps. But if you're like me and have an identical twin sister, the ones that when you were younger, she can fill in the gaps because she was there. And then I've built up different strategies really to try and manage that. So all on the whole, probably people don't necessarily notice, but I know at times. The whole ordeal was particularly stressful. I found it draining emotionally, psychologically. I was eventually diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. I remember having anxiety attacks and physically shaking when I took my son to swimming and trying to get him in the swimming pool and dealing with a baby and not feeling well. I really lost my confidence, really lost my self-esteem. Yeah, it was difficult times. When I had to go to Leeds, I remember my friend saying, "Oh, isn't that nice? Richard Hammond has just left hospital." He'd been there for a while, because after his high-speed accident they had in Top Gear, and as the day he left was the day I arrived. Now I then remember later on Richard Hammond actually having a conversation with Sir Stirling Moss, and who both had traumatic head injuries, and I remember them saying it was like when people asked how you are, so the front of the t-shirt would say, "Yes, thanks very much, I'm fine, thanks for asking," and actually when you were thinking about it on the back, it really said, "I'm still not quite right yet, I'm still not that great," and I would say that that's certainly true of me. So I started to try and help myself get better. I accessed talking therapies, which was really good, because I think after a while you start to protect your family and don't want to tell them that you're not coping. So speaking to someone who was objective and actually who was not emotionally attached to me was excellent. It was really worthwhile. I then, for my balance problems, a colleague had said, "Oh, come this course, it looks interesting." So I went on this course and I actually found out that I had quite a lot of soft signs of neurological problems. So I went on more courses down that, and I used these to treat myself. I also realised, actually from my brother helping me, to figure out that aspartame, which is a sweetener in drinks, also was a trigger for my migraine, so I cut out all that artificial sweeteners. And I also had some cranial osteopathy, which again helped me. Teaching, well, I did get back to work, and I now really use my experience as a teaching what a sagittal sinus thrombosis is. Also trying to get them to appreciate actually the horror of being an inpatient. Also to think about what it's like to be the impact on having a high pressure or a low pressure headache, and maybe to give them a bit of a break, the patients who are not feeling well but might look okay because they're kind of walking about a bit like the walking wounded. I also got my colleague to look at, on where I work, how we deal with patients who have actually got young children in particular, and the effect that has on them. So that's something that has certainly been positive. So really, through doing these courses and then trying different techniques, particularly with those sort of high level balance patients that you want to get a little bit further, they're not quite right, has been really good, being able to push them a bit further, so that's been a benefit. Also, some of the new skills I've learned I've been able to use on, in fact, all stages of patients, adults and children. I've developed new assessment and treatment skills. I feel I can really connect with patients a lot more now. I get what they're on about. I make sure I really listen and really listen. And eventually, I can now say, 10 years on, that I'm no longer ashamed of being a stroke survivor. My mojo has probably taken me about 7 years. I remember my boss asking me, do you want to go full time? And I thought, woof, no. I don't want to do more management. I like treating patients, I like teaching. So actually 3 years ago I set up my own business. I work in the NHS and do a bit of private work. I have done some teaching of proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, a specific technique for physios, and I've actually trained over 250 in some basic skills of that. I've developed a new workshop about for occupational therapists and physiotherapists, and I had about 30 through, so that's a new one. And I'm writing some more. So my passion is teaching and treating patients. What have I learnt? So 10 years on from 2006, I have to say, I am lucky. I am definitely a better person. I just wanted to share this with you to show that actually, you know, from a crisis and a terrible event, it was terrible, but actually lots of positive things have come out, and I would just want to thank you all for listening. If you've got any comments or anything, I would love to hear them or hear your stories. And if this just gets one or two of you to reflect on maybe how you speak to others or those that are ill, or how you approach a patient if you're a therapist, then I have done what I wanted to do. Thank you, and have a good day.